Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, as that will help grow my channel. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd appreciate that as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave those and I will respond. Again, thank you. Well, those that have been following my channel on a regular basis know that my lathe has been giving me a little bit of grief. And I think also I'm just trying to push it a little bit. It was a 25-year-old lathe, and it was a lightweight lathe, and I was turning some bigger pieces. So I did buy a heavy-duty lathe, and I'm just going to do a review here on it. So when it comes to lightweight and heavyweight lathes, generally the lightweight lathes will run you up to $1,000, and they are typically good for 12 inches in diameter. I had been starting to turn larger diameter bowls, or at least wanted to. This is a heavyweight lathe that I purchased, and generally they'll run you $3,000 to $5,000 range, and then you can get some really heavy weight lathes that run even more than that. So in this lathe class, the heavyweight lathes, I was looking at the Craftex, which is what I ended up purchasing, the 802 model, and also was looking at the Laguna. The Laguna was close to $1,000 more for equivalent feature lathe, and I think generally you're paying for the name. The Laguna also does not have a great reputation when it comes to customer service. It has a 1-year warranty versus the Craftex, which has a 3-year warranty. So I did go ahead and purchase the Craftex, which is a Canadian brand that is sold by Busy Bee, and that's what I've reviewed here in this video. So here it is, all assembled. Quite pleased with how it went together. One thing that's very obvious in putting it together, that it's very heavy, much heavier than my previous lathe. As I mentioned, this is a heavy-duty lathe. This weighs 500 pounds. And you can see down on the bottom, on the legs, it has grommets that you can put light wooden supports in here and put additional weight. I'll probably put another 500 pounds on my lathe in sandbags just to provide some additional weight. Again, when it went together, could tell the tolerances were very tight. Everything went together very well. So on my tailstock, slides on the bed extremely well. One of the things that I really like is these levers that hold it in place are very substantial. Whereas on my previous lathe, again a lightweight lathe, they were quite light, and they didn't do as good a job of holding it in place. That's not the case with this. This is built very well. On my tailstock, I've got a metal ring here, a metal handle. The other one, my other lathe, was plastic. Getting back to the lever that holds the tailstock in place, you can see here it's got a snap ring on this. Again, on my other lathe, it did not, and it would often pull out, which was very annoying. So again, just everything is built to a higher standard. So again, fairly pleased. The lathe has a variable frequency drive. It is electronic. My other lathe had variable speed as well, but it was with a lever which changed the dimension of the pulley. speed control on this is electronic with a readout. To increase the speed, just a matter of turning the dial. It turns very smooth, it's very quiet, no vibration whatsoever. My other lathe was quite a bit noisier. I think a lot of that was belt noise, but this is very quiet. It does have 2 speeds, so you can change the belt inside here. You can open this up and change the belt to a high and a low speed. On low speed, it will go down as low as 50 to 80 RPMs, which is quite useful if you put on a piece that's heavy and a little bit out of balance. If you need to turn it a few revolutions just to knock some high spots off first, you can do that. Not recommended that you turn at those low speeds for long periods of time, but obviously if required you can. And on low speed it'll go up as high as 1200, and then on high speed it'll go up to 3000, which is not a speed that I would ever need. Emergency stop and just a regular stop. Forward and reverse. Reverse is useful for sanding. Again, my previous lathe did not have reverse. I can turn on this 18 inches over the bed, and the tool rest is quite substantial as well. You can see that here. It's very beefy, and again, same locking mechanism as we saw up on the tailstock, so again, fairly substantial. Overall, it went together well, took about an hour. Again, it is very, very heavy, 2-man job. It is 220. Again, my other lathe was only 110, so fortunately I already had some 220 wiring in my shop, so I didn't have to make a change there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the faceplate, put a spur drive in here, and then I'll test that with the live center on the other end to see how they made up. With a lathe that is reversible, you do have to have a set screw on your face plates to keep it from screwing off. If it's always turning in the forward direction, the threads are designed so that as you put a tool on it, you're actually tightening up the faceplate. When you run it in reverse, you're actually loosening it so it would just screw off. So there is a set screw on it to hold it into place. So I'm going to go ahead and make that change now, and then we'll come back and we'll check that test. One of the things I discovered is I don't need to take my faceplate off just to put my spur center in there. Although, if I was turning on this, I probably would take it off, but you don't need to. Again, there is a lock. You put your knockout bar in here to lock the spindle in place, and then you loosen the set screws up, and then you can screw it off. So here's the live center brought up to the spur drive, and I don't know if you can see that or not, but they match up perfectly, which again, on lower cost lathes sometimes is an issue. They don't meet up perfectly. You want them to meet up perfectly because you don't want an offset trying to turn something, imagine, to the extreme. If they're not meeting, if they're off a little bit, and then as you try and turn that, if it's a spindle, it's not going to turn concentrically. So that's important that they meet dead on, and these do. So I'm pleased with that. So that's good news. Again, just speaks to the quality of manufacturing for this lathe. I think at this point I've done all my testing. Like I said, I'm going to put some more weight on my lathe, but I've got some light turnings to do here, and I don't need the extra weight for that. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready to mount a bowl up here that I've started, and I'll finish it and we'll come back and take a look at that. So here I am with a bowl mounted on. This bowl was giving me grief on my other lathe. I think it got a bit out of balance. I'm not sure if maybe one of the screws is a little loose here on the faceplate, but it was giving me a little bit of vibration. But you can see here with the tailstock engaged, it is running quite smooth, but it does show you the importance of the variable frequency drive, the speed control. So at 450 I'm good, 500 I'm good, 600 still good, I'm starting to get some shake right around there, so around 600 RPM. Again, I never had this level of control with my other lathe. At that point, my minimum speed was 500. I'm getting a little bit of shake even there. So, you know, this is probably, I say 500 on my other lathe. My other lathe was going fast enough that it was giving me grief rate as slow as I could go. So you can see here how speed control makes a big difference. I'll be able to have no problem at all turning this even at that speed, and then as I get it rounder, I'll be able to increase the speed. So quite pleased even with the way that's turning. So now that I have the lathe all assembled and I have done a couple projects on it, I will say that I'm very pleased with the lathe. It performs very well. It exceeds expectations. And I think for a heavy duty lathe, it's a really good option. I know that the Craftex name is not as recognized as some of the big ones. But again, I think, as I mentioned earlier, with Laguna, I think you're paying for the name. And I'm not even convinced that you're getting the value for it either. So with this lathe, I'm very pleased, and I'm sure that this lathe will do me another 25 years. So overall, I think this was a very good choice.